O'Reilly.
Check engine light on? Take the guesswork out of your check engine light with O'Reilly Veriscan. It's free and provides a report with solutions based on over 650 million vehicle scans verified by ASE certified master technicians. And if you need help, we can recommend a shop for you. Ask for O'Reilly Veriscan today.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
This is your Tear It Down. Tear it down. Tear it down. Leader Fan Radio Network.
The next question. This is high-level competitive stuff.
And KFAN.com. 1 minute and 49 seconds past 3 o'clock. Central Standard Time. Welcome back. It is a midweek Wednesday edition of the Afternoon Aardvark. My name is Dan Barreiro. I host the program for Ringstein Wretch newspaper, the Twin Cities. Guardsy is the producer of the broadcast, not to mention radio voice of the Golden Gopher Women's Basketball Club. We are delighted you are along for today's ride. Kessler is a Wednesday regular. He is scheduled to join us in studio approximately 5:30. I fully expect him to be wearing either a Prince shirt or a Kendrick Lamar shirt, and maybe a cap of one, commemorating one, and the shirt in the other, just to make sure he's covered all the demographics, and all of the bases. Right?
He'll be playing the hits today.
Oh my God,
he will be playing the hits today. There's no doubt about it.
There is absolutely no question about that. And right now, I believe he's our only scheduled guest, unless I forgot one. Did I forget anybody?
No, that's what we got today.
That's for today. Quick reminder, tomorrow we will be joined in studio by former U.S. Attorney Andy Luger. He will join, I think we scheduled it tentatively for 3:30 to 4:30, and we hope to cover a lot of ground. Get caught, now that he is out of office again, the hope obviously is he can speak more honestly about some issues, and I'm very much looking forward to that visit based on our pre-interview, one could say, just the other day. So tomorrow, we'll probably have the inbox, and we'll also have Andy Luger in studio. The ongoing subject of tearing it down. Williams Arena came up again, brought up again over the weekend in a Royce column. It's an old subject. It's come up intermittently many, many times over the years. You have made your feelings strong. Tubby Smith made his feelings strong a long time ago, got in trouble for it, as I recall it. You made your feelings known more recently. I have come to accept your position, not maybe as militant about it as you. But I think it's time for us to re-examine the story, because I want to make it about, and you can speak to a lot of this because you're around the U all the time. I want to speak about more than the arena itself, the basketball arena. I want to get into how we couple that. In 2025, it ain't just about the arena. It's also about how you, I guess, can connect that with NIL money, the money that you need to do business, if you want to at least try to be a factor in a conference like the Big Ten on the basketball side, correct? And I don't want to, I also, I mentioned this, we talked about it briefly Sunday, and the other thing that bugs me a little bit about fanning the flames of tearing it down is I'm not convinced. I think you're more convinced, and clearly from the column, Royce is more convinced that it wouldn't matter what coach you got, that there is no coach that could turn that building into what it once was. I'm still not ready to accept that premise. I don't think I will fully grant this is not a great job. I think a point that Richard Pitino tried to make a lot. But I still don't know if I grant that point. So I want to make it all-inclusive, because I don't even think, if you believe the arena is the key to everything, that you're aware of what else has to come along with it in order to give a program like here at the University of Minnesota, certainly on the men's side, and we can talk about the women's side, a greater chance perhaps to be more relevant than they are right now, which is irrelevant, right? They had the nice little 3-game winning streak, but now they've returned to where they were, even losing a bad game against the, at least then, last place Washington Huskies. Most recently, was it Illinois killed us here? And Illinois is good. We know
on Saturday.
That. Yeah, on Saturday. So, I want to take the temperature of the audience on this thing. And part of it, what it happens is if the program itself is in disarray or starting over again or, struggling, generally that's not the time you're going to get that extra spark from people who, let's dig down on this story and let's see what we can do to give the University of Minnesota a brand spanking new basketball mecca that will be futuristic or at least current, and yet still within that, we find ways to pay homage to the historical significance of the barn.
The charm of it all,
etc. That it's not much, there's no buzz about any part of this program right now. The women have improved, obviously, more than the men this year. But let's face it, the men's part of this has to be a big piece of it. And so if, for example, your guy, Mark Coyle, and I hope you're sitting down. Yeah, you are sitting down. That's good because this is rare for him. Decides to hold a press conference in which he comes out fiery. Well, even that's strange credulity. If he just comes out and says, look, I don't want to talk about anything today but about a decision we believe in. Williams Arena needs to be torn down tomorrow. Okay, it probably won't be that dramatic, but you get my point. And we've got some ideas. We've got some ways we think we can get this done, but the time has come. We are convinced this is going to happen. You're not going to get a standing ovation because, again, a lot of people yawn. They'll say, well, okay, fine. Let me know what the plan is, but it's just not going to be at the top of the list. In fact, there's going to be more people interested in a new arena for the Wolves than there will be for the Gophers. Now, it's interesting because in the Royce suggestion, it's the same arena, which I'm not sure works. But
right.
He almost made it sound like it would be, I don't know if retrofitted is the right term. There'd be some differences in terms of what you would expect in attendance. And then maybe eventually, you can match the attendance interest that the Wolves currently have. That's practical. I just don't know how that plays. I don't have a good feeling that plays. Now,
to me, it doesn't.
Maybe in 2025, again, the old rules don't apply. You ain't going to get 2 new arenas, so you have to figure out some creative way. I'm doubtful. I'm skeptical on that working. Do you believe, I want to start with you in this part of it. Do you believe within the hierarchy of the university, whether it's the president's office or do we have a chancellor?
I think she's just the president.
Oh, okay.
I don't know what the title is.
And other officials that have some power, and the athletic director and the athletic department. Do you think there is a belief that we're going to have to try to attack this very soon, or not so much?
Well, I know that they have commissioned studies for the building, and they've commissioned, consultants or engineering firms to give them estimates on 2 different things: the cost of a new arena or remodeling Williams Arena.
A deep remodel.
I think they started that about a year ago. I don't know where it stands at the moment, but I do know they've identified a couple other places, at least one other place on campus that they could build a new arena right from the ground and not even use the Williams Arena footprint. So they're investigating it currently, or at least they've started it.
But part of this, I think again, is you have to come up with a public relations strategy. Mm-hmm. Because again, I tend to think, we've talked about this before, it's hard to get money anywhere anymore when it comes to sports stuff, but your best shot is the state university, right? I do think the Ski-U-Mah thing still resonates with people over there, where you have a better chance that some people, I'm not saying they'd finance all of it, but would give you a bigger piece of it than in the case of A-Rod and Mark Laurie, who Well, look, A-Rod said in this studio, we're gonna get a stadium or arena that's privately financed. 100%, basically, is what he said. Now, again, we got to see that. We got to read the fine print on where that goes. But I don't think there's any stomach at the state legislature or even the governor's office to say, "Oh yeah, we'll help you buy it or build it. We might help you. I don't know, maybe on some of the tax stuff. Maybe you can get something done there." But that's the advantage I think Williams Arena has. But I do think half of it is we have to have a very conscious, dare I say it, deliberate. No, what's the other buzzword beyond deliberate? Intentional strategy.
Yep.
To try to sell this, to give it some oomph, to give it a little bit of momentum, especially at a time where at least men's college basketball is so irrelevant on the local sports menu.
Do you want my public relations message on the other side of the break?
Let's do it. That's very good timing. That's what I was hoping you would do. Tease it.
Because I think, we'll see, at least somewhat of a public relations message that could be used to massage that dramatic change if, in fact, they do want to just build a completely new arena. But first, speaking of money, the fan wants to give you a shot to put a grand in your hand. It is our national cash contest. You can enter the keyword pay at KFAN.com. That's the first keyword on this Wednesday. Go to KFAN.com and enter the keyword pay.
Here's the first snarky St. Thomas-related text. Maybe Gophers can share a stadium with St. Thomas. Thanks, Johnny Athletic.
Trading at Schwab is now powered by Ameritrade, unlocking the power of Thinkorswim, the award-winning trading platforms loaded with features that let you dive deeper into the market. Visualize your trades in a new light on Thinkorswim desktop with robust charting and analysis tools, all while you uncover new opportunities with up-to-the-minute market news and insights. Thinkorswim is available on desktop, web, and mobile to meet you where you are. It's built by the trading obsessed to help you trade brilliantly. Learn more at schwab.com/trading.
It's the age-old University of Minnesota question. What do we do with Williams Arena? What's even practical to do with Williams Arena? It's the old chicken and the egg question. Your best chance to gather any meaningful momentum on replacing it, do you have to get better first as a program? Or do you buy it the other way, which is, well, you can't get better first until you fix the arena? I worry, Guardsy, that it's too easy and convenient to say it's as simple as that, because I don't think it is. But you mentioned you were going to give us what I asked for, which was what is your public relation? It's 2025, man. Everything's about message and how you deliver it. So what message would you suggest that you deliver to give itself the best chance to gather some meaningful momentum?
I don't think you ever bring up, this is what we need to be competitive, like you said, because you can make that argument either way, and the only way you're going to know is if you go ahead and do it. And even though there are arguments that suggest throughout history, when you build a new arena, all of a sudden people come, you get some wins, players start coming. There are examples of that. I'm sure there's examples where it doesn't work out that conveniently. So I think you make that irrelevant. For me, what I would hammer home is, and what I have talked about when I've argued this, because as you know, for the record, if people are just joining, I did not bring this up today, even though
I did.
Usually it is like a February topic. It has been over the years, either on the Cake Show or on this show. To me, you have to make it all about, we're trying to provide the best fan experience that we can possibly provide for anybody that wants to come, regardless of how the team is doing. And we can't do that right now at Williams Arena.
That's well stated.
And that's what I've argued. And I've even talked to Mark Coyle about it. Like a year ago on the podcast, on the Gopher podcast, I said, for me, a lot of people that have an opinion on Williams Arena haven't really been there since it was quote unquote rocking. And they remember it from 97.
The days when Clem was leading the charge before he started outright brazenly continuing to cheat in a way that made it impossible for him to keep his job.
And they remember it from then, or they remember it from Bill Musselman and the funny warm-up, or they remember it because either they or someone they know was at the Edgerton State Championship game in the 1950s. When they had to call the fire marshal, that whole bit. We romanticize about the feelings that we have in that building. And I'm one of those because I'm the last generation that I think truly cares about it. I was alive for 97.
First college basketball game I ever covered was Williams Arena at the Indiana Daily Student.
It's a wonderful place.
Yes.
I still love going there. I was just there on Saturday.
A little drafty.
I love calling games there. They didn't have air conditioning, so they had to bring it in for the Lynx. But what I think the people that a lot of times have big opinions about it is, well, you can't tear it down. I always ask, well, have you been to a game lately? Mm-hmm. Because, and I've said this to Mark, we do ask a lot out of our fans, especially the older fans. It's a hard building to get around.
It is.
The seats are not comfortable. The seats are tight. There are seats that are just downright bad. You know, in a perfect world, there's probably 11,000 quote unquote good seats. We know about the benches. In 2025, in a pro sports market where you're competing with all kinds of new bells and whistles and all kinds of different distractions from your place, for me, my messaging would be, we want to make sure when you come to Williams Arena, you have an outstanding customer experience. That has nothing to do with whatever's happening there. Men's and women's basketball, if it's a concert, whatever it is.
Right.
Huntington Bank Stadium, I think, is your example. And by the way, the program's been fairly solid once they got that going on. I'm not going to say that it's going to lead to Big Ten championships or national championships.
No, but
in the 15 years that building's been in place, there haven't been awful seasons.
Right.
There's been disappointing seasons, certainly. There's been good seasons. But the other thing that I've seen in just my 14 years now of being on the sidelines is that there's now new traditions of a lot of people that are my age or older now have been season ticket holders for a decade. Their kids are now going to college there. Their kids are now coming back after they've been there. Like, there's a whole new back to campus. That met the objective, I think. It didn't lead to national championships or Big Ten championships. I'm not going to argue that. Yeah. But anybody that goes to a game there, I think, understands it's a really positive experience. Maybe once you get in, because it's a little hard with the choke points and everything.
Well,
but when you're in your seat, inside, outside, wherever it is, it's a good vibe and it's a good watch. Williams is tough. You really have to be dedicated. And I just don't think you're going to get the casual that, oh, yeah, I'll go check out a game at the barn because, my grandpa told me it was a great place.
Yeah, the history of it is undeniable, but at some point there are diminishing returns on that where I think I like to think folks who grew up in it and believe in that history say, yeah, but I'd like a little more convenience at some point. Let me ask you this question, and a good text has come in related to this very subject that almost seemed to read my mind about where I wanted to go next. Matt in Rosemount writes, you can build a new stadium or new arena, but we're not competing in the NIL level in a meaningful way to improve our program. So his point is it building a new arena in of itself, I don't think is the end all. It's a piece.
Correct.
But I don't think the act of building a new arena means we're in on NIL, correct? You tell me, how linked are they? Because let's face it, the NIL piece has become such a big piece now.
It's
you
huge.
can make the argument it's bigger than the arena.
It is.
Year to year, right?
If you asked anybody down there right now, we're going to give you $10 million for arena naming rights, or we'll give it to Dinkytown athletes, they'll say we'll take it for Dinkytown athletes.
Yeah.
That's what they would say. I think that's what I would say. I think there are ways that you can tie it in. Because of the corporate partnership stuff, there's probably a way where you could say, hey, Best Buy is going to get this club level, but as part of it, they're also going to make a donation to Dinkytown athletes. I think that's legal. I think that's realistic. So yeah, because they do have work to do on the basketball side for NIL. They've spent the last 3 years trying to get football where it needs to go, and they've done, I think, a pretty good job of retaining their players, which obviously was a big problem for men's basketball last year. They lost 2 legitimate pieces to NIL that they're now playing for top 15 teams in Texas. I watched both of them on Saturday. It was directly linked to name, image, and likeness payments.
Yeah, it wasn't we're shaky on Ben Johnson. It was the money.
Yeah.
And you can't blame him.
The point guard said he was coming back twice.
Right. Yeah.
And then he left. So it's a tough situation.
A couple people have texted on the idea of the remodel. I'm not a great architectural mind, but I have to believe that's not the answer, because I think then you talk yourself into smaller moves than you really need, which is it's got to go away. And then people say, well, where are they going to play? Well, they play, you figure out something, I assume, with Target Center or X or a common,
well, if you built it on a completely different site, you play at the barn until the new one's ready.
That's true, too. Yeah, I don't know what even the options are in that regard. But I'm very squeamish on, you'd be surprised how we could. No, I don't buy that. I think in the end you need a new building, and you can have the bells and whistles that are associated with places like they used to be called Conseco Fieldhouse, where it still has a feel of old fashioned, if that's what you're looking for.
Yeah.
But the
Well, everybody assumes, not to cut you off.
No,
but,
that's fine.
Yeah, I'm. By the way, I'm open-minded to the remodel aspect of it. I'm not optimistic that that's the right way to do it. So, but I think it's worth investigating because I do think the building does matter to a lot of people.
No question, yes.
So I wouldn't want to rule that out, but it also, for me, has a lot to overcome as opposed to just a new building. And people make the assumption all the time that, what are you going to do? You're just going to throw up another cookie cutter arena like they do, they have in Madison or like they have in Ohio State, where it's more of the old school Target Center NBA-like arenas back from the mid-'90s. So why would you have to do that? If you're building a new arena, you get to do whatever you want. And we've seen the dramatic increases in, I guess, improvements and how stadiums and arenas have been built around the country.
Much more creative.
You can make it as cool as you want.
You absolutely can.
You can. So
it doesn't have to be cookie cutter at all.
It doesn't have to be sterile.
Once upon a time, maybe.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be like that. So I don't like that narrative that, it'll just be another also-ran where ours has charm now. Yeah, it has charm, but you're also giving up a lot to have that quote-unquote charm. And most people right now aren't choosing to go see the charm as much as they used to.
Ray and Hopkins. Dan, when does a sports venue go from ancient and tired to iconic? Would JG tear down Hinkle? Would JG tear down Fenway? Yes, I am nostalgic because I went to the U and had season tickets there for 35 years. Now I attend about 3 to 5 games a year. It's not the building. When the Gopher men or women get successful, Williams, I hate referring to it as the barn, will be the site of excitement. Now, I will say I agree in part with him in that I don't think it's as big an impediment to success as people want to believe, because I think that becomes the easy game of, well, no, it's not the coach, it's not the other things we're doing. If we just had a better arena, everything would take care of itself. I hate that thinking because I don't think it would get the Gophers anywhere. I really don't. I think it's a lot more collaborative, so to speak. There's a lot of other issues.
I agree with that.
But what do you say to his deal of, okay, you talk about Hinkle in laudatory terms all of the time. So how do we decide when the iconic part of it's too important to move on and when it's time, we got to get rid of it?
I think when multiple generations have told us that they don't really care about the iconic nature of it anymore. And I'm 42, as I say all the time. I think I'm the last generation that it actually means something to. And it's not just because the Gophers haven't been successful in the last 25 years at a consistent level, but also in that time, the NBA has shown up here. And a lot of eyeballs have transferred over to that. And people are picking, the NBA, even when the Wolves were bad, over Gopher basketball. So I get that point. We hear that all the time. People talk about Duke. People talk about Fog Allen Fieldhouse. To me, those are apples and oranges. Hinkle's probably a good example, although they've obviously been a much more successful program here in the recent memory. But people want to compare it to Duke and Fog Allen. It's just, to me, apples and oranges when you're talking about two of the powerhouses that can do anything. The arena is almost irrelevant because their fans are always going to show up because they just always have.
We've got a bunch more texts that have come in on this subject. I'll try to intersperse those. Kessler is going to join in studio in about 2 hours. There are a number of other subjects I want to explore, largely in the toy department, including one we got to yesterday about some stuff going on down in Dallas, Texas, that I want to sort of, I guess to a certain extent, reconsider. And then I want to talk about, have you heard about the new, there's a new allegedly cutting-edge idea on how to solve the age-old issue of people getting on and off airplanes. It's called the hopscotch approach.
Oh.
Are you familiar with it?
I'm not, but I'm going on a plane tonight. I'll have to find out.
I have no idea I don't even know if I understand it, but I do want to explore that as well. Plenty of time to get into all of that before Kessler joins, as I said, at 5.
Trading at Schwab is now powered by Ameritrade, bringing you an expanding library of education with even more ways to sharpen your trading skills. Access new online courses, insightful webcasts, articles, engaging videos, and more, all curated just for traders. Plus, guided learning paths with content designed to fit your unique interests. No sifting to find exactly what you need, so you can spend your time learning to trade brilliantly. Learn more at schwab.com/trading.
We got a slew of texts via the Bradshaw and Bryan KFAN text line, 64686, on the subject at hand. It's not a new one. We're not breaking new ground here, but we like to sort of revisit it every once in a while. The question of whether it is time to tear Williams Arena down and how do you get that done, and what does it get replaced with, and where do you get the money? And more importantly, I think, at least in my case, trying to caution people into thinking that case closed, we check that box, we're fine, we're back, because I don't think it's that simple at all. It's much more complicated, and I don't like, I hate using that as the crutch to explain away ineptitude on the court. There are a couple people who tweeted, one in particular who said, I don't miss the old barn because in my 29 years, I think he said 29, maybe 32 years, he said they've so rarely been relevant in that sense that they're so. He basically said there's nothing to miss. Yeah, he says, Trev, I'm 29 years old. It means almost nothing to me because the Gophers have had about 2 or 3 respectable seasons in my entire life, and that's a little low. They've had probably a little more than that.
Sure, but I get his point.
I get the point he's making, and to that extent, I think that should be part of, if we're talking about the pitch and how you attempt to sell it, it's exactly that. I mean, we all have things that we wax nostalgic about, me included, but let's face it, I mean, a lot of the folks who most completely would value Williams Arena, they're dying off, right? And so I think to that extent, there would be much less of a rebellion now than there might have been, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when anybody even, bothered, going down that particular road. A couple people have also mentioned going the Northwestern route, which is a smaller.
Yeah.
What do they hold? 10,000?
If that.
If that.
Yeah.
I don't think it's state of the art, but
they did a really nice job on the renovation, though.
They did. Okay,
yeah.
good. Okay.
And Welsh Ryan Arena was essentially a high school arena.
Mm-hmm.
It was a big. I'm sure you were there back in the old days. And they were able to renovate it
that's
and
a good point.
Make the seats really nice. They've got a club there now, and it's a smaller capacity, because that's the other thing that needs to be discussed. There's great disagreement on how big the arena should be. I think 9,000 max, maybe 9,500.
I can be convinced of that, 9 to 10.
Because some people go, it's got to be at least 10, 11,
right.
12, whatever. No, it doesn't. Because of all the things we just talked about.
It does not.
The changing. To me, it's not a bad idea to have more people want to get in your building than can.
Yes.
As opposed to, let's make it 15, 16, 17,000. We see that more often than not in any sport. It's much easier to just watch on TV. So I'm 9,500, and even like USC, where I just was, I think that's what theirs is. The Galen Center that was built in 2006. Got a nice lower level. Every seat's good. The upper deck's right on top of it. It's charming. There's a million ways you can make it that way.
Another texter, Sean, would a Wolves and Gopher collaboration work, which we had talked about earlier? I don't think so. I don't think you do.
No, I don't know. I do not.
I don't know if it becomes, a necessity where you say, well, it's the only thing anything's going to get done. But my guess is, especially if A-Rod and Lori get, the approval to run the Wolves, their plans are going to be pretty grandiose, and it's going to be, this is all about us. We're not sharing anything with anybody. It sounds crazy. You say, well, how many arenas do you need? But when it comes to, we certainly saw it with college football, man, with the Gophers. How many times did Mason tell us about just the lack of feel that this is, you're in your place. You're in a feeling at the Dome where you're in somebody else's place.
Exactly right.
And that matters to people. Now, again, winning matters more than anything. If the Gophers were top 5 in the conference, there would be more people in the seats. There's no question about that. I don't want to relitigate. 612 guy is bitter for me suggesting to the cheating of Clem Haskins. He writes, cheating, give me a break. The entire NCAA has been fraudulent for decades. I don't want to relitigate the Clem thing, but I have not softened. I know a lot of people have, and they're doing the old retro game. Well, look at what we're doing now, and it almost seems like Clem's a revolutionary, progressive. He was ahead of his time. No. That doesn't work with me. He presided over significant academic fraud cheating. And did anybody ever prove it? Maybe not. We can argue about that. But the only person who set up the wall over which neither McKinley Boston or Mark Dienhart could ever be allowed to climb was Clem. And so I'm not going to play the romanticizing game of, well, we see where we are now. You can believe two things. You can believe the NCAA has been fraudulent for decades, and still believe that Clem was a fraud on what took place here. I don't care how many decades go by. I'm not saying he needs to go to prison, but I'm not in the camp that has in any way, shape, or form softened. So I remember, we've done this a couple times on air. Mm-hmm. If you go back specifically to the reporting at the time, the specifics of what went on, the brazen nature of what went on over a long period of time, give me a break. Go ahead if it makes you feel better about him, because, again, you have those good memories of what he represented, and he's a good guy to talk to. He's fun, the whole bit. He's collegial, all those things. But no, I'm not going to play that game of, well, a number of years have gone by. Really, how bad was it? It sucked. It was awful is what it was. And at the time, it was the worst example of academic fraud that went well beyond the old, well, you help somebody here, you help somebody. It's just, every program does it around the edges. That was the other big pronouncement. Well, maybe, but then we didn't do a very good job of hiding the cheating that took place. So if you're looking for me backing off on that, you've absolutely come 100% to the wrong place.
Well, I'll also add as an addendum on the backside of that. You can make the argument that they've never recovered from that scandal, and a lot of that has to do with how they operated immediately after. With a lot of things we wouldn't even be having
including
this
football, including Mason's program.
Yeah, but we wouldn't even be having this conversation about renovating the barn or doing anything to the barn. Like, they probably already would have done that 20 years ago.
Good point.
But because there was the sense, at least from what I've heard, I wasn't covering the teams at this point, that things had gotten too out of whack and too out of control, and sports were operating, specifically basketball, was operating too much on their own little deserted island. They basically shut everything down.
They did.
They couldn't get financials. They didn't ask for financial support to do this. They didn't ask to renovate that. They basically said things have gotten too out of whack for what we want to be as a university. And how Munson was hindered by it, obviously, and that's when this thing really started kind of going down, right? And then Tubby had it going, and then we know what happened there. Like, they've never been able to really reestablish solid footing.
Very true.
After that, and that's not all on that scandal,
but that's what set it in motion.
It certainly hurt.
There's no question. I mean, people again can pretend that's not true, and that's too tough. But that's the fact for people who have been around this university as you have. That's where that started a trend that became very difficult to reverse.
So if you wax nostalgia about the Clem Haskins days at the barn, and by the way, if you go back and look at them, there's a couple of tournaments. Obviously, the Sweet 16, Elite 8 early. Yeah. But then there are some NITs mixed in.
That's true.
And there's some not very good teams mixed in. And then another tournament. Like, it wasn't this consistent Tom Izzo-like program where you're just banging out NCAA bursts every single year. But it's people don't like to hear that.
How about this idea from Glenn in Richfield? A mega basketball arena could provide an intimate setting for both collegiate and professional teams in Minnesota. Think about the flexibility with the MSHSL, other large events, Final Four, etc. It is possible, and it is resourceful. It could be another Minnesota icon, like the Mall of Hysteria.
It does need to be the People's Stadium. They do need to sell it like that to do different events. And the state high school thing, I also think, is an important bit here. Whatever they do to it, they have to find a way to get the entire state tournament back on campus.
That's a good point. I agree with you there.
And I don't know if it's because Target Center's cheaper or it's more, or there's a robotics convention on campus, because they've been kicked out of the barn for a robotics convention, for some postseason stuff before. But I think that has to be, for kids growing up here, if they're going to the state tournament, they're going to Williams Arena. That's what I did.
Yep.
And again, it's a different time, but I still remember. I mean, that's the Edgerton bit, going back to the 1950s. Like, and it's never going to be like that, of course, but what the Civic Center was, for all those years. But to have the basketball tournament, both boys and girls, for me, you've got to figure out a way to get it back on campus, just as you like to say, an aesthetic, a vibe, a feel.
Sure.
That's where we want our high school season to end, is at Williams Arena.
John, the mail carrier, Dan, this is to Dan and Mashed. The product on the floor is most often not watchable. I don't care if they build the Taj Mahal. I don't want to spend my money and the bottleneck of the U if they're not good. I can watch at home and turn it off. Can't really do that except leave when there. But spent that money and time, so you stay and watch an unwatchable team most years. Well, again, there's some truth to that. You can't fall into the trap of believing that everything's going to be fine with the building of a new arena. It has to be part of a larger, I think, more ambitious, more comprehensive plan that clearly involves NIL. It includes, frankly, the right coach, or taking a shot at what might be classified as the right coach, because it is all related. There's not any question about that. And that was my only hesitation even bringing it up again, was the other pieces of this are, as you mentioned, the way things are on campus these days, people say, give me the NIL money.
Yeah.
Ahead of whatever, the naming rights money. That's what to a new arena. I need that money on that side of it more than anything else, including a new arena. Now, in a perfect world, you don't have to choose between the two, and you say, this is the comprehensive nature of the plan. We're going for all of it.
Yeah, be aggressive.
We're going for all of it, and we're going to take our best shot at it. And this is what and as you say, the price tag in 2025 ain't going to be cheap, but I think people do have this vision of, okay, you're going to build a 15,000 seat arena or bigger, there's no denying, I would think, that if it's a 9,000 seat arena, you're going to be able to save yourself some dough. And that doesn't mean then you build the 9,000 seat arena on the cheap. You do have the bells and whistles that are associated with good arenas, clever arenas that are state of the art, but also harken back to the past, because you want to make it about, what that building, that unique building, did indeed represent. It almost has to be a very comprehensive plan. I'm just curious as to when they decide, all right, we're going for it. And my guess is their hesitation right now is, one thing you can argue shouldn't have anything to do with the other, but to John's point, the mail carrier, at a time like this, I think people get more excited about what you're talking about if, hey, man, they've come out of nowhere. They're in 5th place in the Big Ten. They're above 500, and they're going to make the tournament again this year. I think that helps then if you're trying to come up with the plan to how to sell it. It becomes a little easier to sell, and there's less grumbling going on.
Yeah, it would help. I do think, to me, a new arena would represent a new commitment to the program, because I think when you just kind of let it sit idly by, like they have really, they were actually ahead of the game in the 90s renovating Williams Arena. It used to be all benches in there.
That's true.
They were ahead of the game while others were building new arenas and practice facilities were starting to pop up. They were ahead, at least on time, in putting in the actual chair back seats, even though they're not very comfortable, especially for people that are taller. A lot of them don't have great sight lines, depending on where you are. Putting in the barn lofts, which was, that happened in the 90s. Like, that was a little bit ahead of the time, at least on time, to say, we're investing in this. We're making this a better experience for people that want to come here. We're trying to get corporate money in. But if you say, this is a comprehensive plan because we want to be good at basketball on the men's and women's side, and it doesn't even have to be just about men's, because we've seen women's basketball continues to skyrocket up, right? It's volleyball, softball, and women's basketball right now that are the growth products for television ratings, for attendance, for money, for the whole bit. That's how you sell it, is we're going all in on the basketball side of this, and we think an arena is part of it. Of course, it's not everything, but I wouldn't try to sell it as everything. We want it to be a great experience for people when they come down here.
No, that's a good selling tactic. I agree. A 35-year Gopher Hoops season ticket holder here went to, is it Chi Health Center in Omaha? Is that what it's called? Last night for Creighton, UConn.
Yep.
Awesome atmosphere, but it's the only game in town. So they can draw 18,000 per game. Now I understand why Jackson McAndrew, one of us, Zeta, went there over the Notre Dame, Wisconsin, etc. Well, this does get back to that age-old point. The disadvantage that your university, your big state university, is located in a major metropolitan city in which you are competing, whether you like it or not, with a bunch of other sports products, right? We've talked about that subject, and I've written about that subject over the years 1 billion times. Well, 1 billion might be a little high. 1 million might be more like it. That does make it trickier. People deciding they've got so much money to spend, and you're competing here. I mean, the advantage, obviously, in university towns is they're not competing against anybody. They're the story, good or bad, within a town, right? And here we don't have to go through the list of sports franchises we have on the college level, or I should say on the professional level, that also end up being you end up competing against them. Glenn Mason has talked about this on our show for many, many years too. So it's a combo platter of things. I'm sorry, I feel bad because I've hurt the feelings of several Clem Haskins fans, and I'm sorry for that. I'm really not trying to do that. I if you want to cling to the folksy Clem and that particular theme with him, God bless you. I'm not here to tell you that you have to remember what the truth is. It's up to you. You can bury it. You can move on from it. I'm just saying that I won't, because I remember too much of it, and I don't like like I said, the retroactive deal where, well, look at, I mean there would be no such investigation today, which is beside the point. And if you're a Clem, big time Clem guy or gal, and you're really curious, go back and read the report, or go back and read what Pioneer Press wrote. I mean, dig deep into it, and maybe your memory will be refreshed, because I think it's too easy now. It's almost like, yeah, they did a bunch of things they did, and it really doesn't. These are things that wouldn't even be investigated in 2024, 25, like he was ahead of his time. No, he wasn't ahead of his time. He was protecting his ass. He was protecting what he thought was a good team, which obviously it was. It's a team I remember is a great team to cover, especially the Final Four team.
Yep.
But I mean, don't turn it so folksy that you miss the forest for the trees on what that whole thing was about, and don't pretend that somehow, just because the decades have gone by, that somehow Clem got a bad rap at the time. Clem and that program got exactly what it deserved. Let's make this actually, we're a little early.
We got a minute or two. Can I say one more thing about just the tearing down or the tradition?
Right.
Because, I mean, I'm old enough to remember. I don't think I went to any games there, but I'm old enough to remember when one of your favorite pavilions, the Maturi Pavilion.
Oh, yeah, that is one of my favorites.
Was the old Mariucci, right? And how many stories do we hear from Louis, from Pat Micheletti, from name any Gopher great that played in Mariucci, and they share the hallway? I mean, for people that haven't been downstairs at Williams, it is cool to think about that. Lou Nanny was walking in the same hallway that I'm walking in right now. He was on the other side. Or, Pat Micheletti was there. Or Shirts and Skins with Bobby Bell. Bobby Bell and Carl Eller would go play pickup in Williams.
Crazy.
But Mariucci, because the other thing I don't understand is the only history we cling to with Gopher basketball is that we used to go to games there. Wasn't necessary. We have 82.
And the cliche about never had atmosphere like that.
Yeah.
That's not the best atmosphere in town.
When the barn's rocking.
Yes.
I get all of it.
Yes.
I can still feel it from 97. I can still sit in the seat I sat in for the triple overtime game against Iowa in 97. I remember every second of it. But there's not there's 97, there's 82, and I think wasn't there 72 in terms of Big Ten championships?
Yes, right.
Not a ton, right?
No.
So we're holding on to very isolated, specific memories. The hockey program is holding on to national championships that have been won or on the way.
Well, finally.
Herb Brooks.
After a long dry spell, but that's another story, yeah.
But you know what they did? They built new Mariucci.
Well, and they also started recruiting outside Minnesota.
They did.
Yeah.
But that
sacrilege, according to Micheletti, but go ahead.
It's true.
Yeah.
That building had unbelievable history. And the stories that come out of old Mariucci and coming up the steps and, people leaving at intermission to go drink at Station 19 and then come back in. All those stories still exist. And you know what else exists? A brand new hockey arena across the street that is a pretty good vibe still. I was just there in December.
No, it's actually, I think, better now because I think they found a way to get more kids in the building, right?
Yeah.
It's remember the years where it was half empty all the time. The beautiful people don't use the seats, but the tickets, and then they just go vacant. It seems as if that has been solved largely.
Yeah, and it's probably too big for college hockey.
That could be
because it's about 9,000-10,000.
Yep.
It's definitely too big, but they're obviously filling it. So, but the point is, Gopher hockey survived. Gopher hockey fans survived. Not only survived, but thrived. And Gopher hockey's always going to be, it's a different animal because of what it is. We're in the state of hockey. You're the ambassador, you know it. But I never went to Old Mariucci, but I know a lot of people that did. And it seems like I know everybody liked New Mariucci when it was built. I went to games there, and it's still, so you move on, and you remember Old Mariucci, and it's great. And you can kind of still look at it if you want. And there's pictures all over of Old Mariucci at New Mariucci, but point is, you can like the new building too and still remember the old one.
100% true. Very well stated. That's I enjoyed this hour. I think we covered a lot of ground here, and I am curious to see how this plays out. Because you keep thinking, well, they got to be on the clock with this thing. It can't go on forever. And I know there are other priorities, and you got to decide what you're going to prioritize, and you got to figure out how again to to sell the thing. And maybe I'm underestimating an arena for both. I just have a hard time.
I don't think you want that.
I have a hard time.
Well, you don't want it off campus for Minnesota.
No,
and that's where it would have to be.
That's the first thing.
So you don't want that.
No, I don't. I wouldn't think you would, and I just don't think. And as I mentioned, now, when A-Rod proclaims what he's proclaiming, it sounds great. Now we're going to have to get to the particulars about okay, privately funded. We're going to get it done. Maybe they have a great plan in place, but I doubt, like he said, he's going to want to share any of that. And if, again, he can pull it off with largely private financing, who's going to argue with him? I don't think anybody's going to argue with this. The city of Minneapolis ain't going to argue with him, that's for sure.
Right.
Nor will the state. The
state won't. So the last thing I'll say, because you asked the timeline, because as I mentioned, they're actively looking at options for either a new arena or renovating Williams Arena. The 100-year anniversary is 1928 or 2028.
2028, okay.
The first game, I think, was Feb 1928 against Ohio State University. You announce next year you're breaking ground on the new one at a new spot or whatever, but the last year you play is the 100th and final season at Williams Arena. And then you move into the next one.
Maybe you threaten to leave if you don't get the money you need to build one. Oh, that's tough to do if you're a state university, I guess.
Yeah. Didn't Rochester want it at some point?
That might be
when
true.
When they were picking where everything was going to be?
All I want, in all honesty, once the thing is pulverized or, blown up or however you do it, I just want one brick. Can I have just one brick from Williams Arena? Is that possible?
Absolutely.
Just one brick. That's all I want.
It'll probably be like $250.
That's fine. We'll get you I have no problem with that. I'll pay whatever it takes. I believe enough in history that, and it does have personal memories for me.
Yeah.
I would like to have one brick.
I'll heave cry in the last game.
Yeah, no question. Yes, because
I will be, and hopefully my dad's there with me. Hopefully my sons are there with me. I'll absolutely. When we go 3 generations in the same building, it's magical. I love it. I'll absolutely heave cry.
We've got more to. Thanks for all the a lot of good ideas and texts coming in. We may revisit the subject a little bit later. I do want to get into some other conversation between 4 and 5. Top 5 at 5 yet to come. Kessler will join here from the studio at 5:30. I do want to revisit a subject we explored yesterday, but I'm not sure I did a very good job of it. The more I think about it, and it has to do with a lot of unrest in Dallas at the Mavericks' most recent home game and the way security dealt with a number of individuals who allegedly violated the terms of the Fan Deportment Act, whatever the hell that is. I want to revisit a little bit of that, and we'll get into some other controversies as well before we wrap things up at 6.